We're going to combine all three chapters into one slide this time. Some of the slides I don't have anything to say. I'm just going to let you look at them, so you'll hear some silence, and then I'll move on to the next slide. You can always pause it to read the slide at your leisure, and how long ever you want to peruse over that will be fine. This is really interesting because in the past we were always thought that the doctors were here, they were kind of, in a loose term, on a pedestal, and that we did everything that we were told to do, that we followed the orders, and that we didn't have the autonomy and we couldn't make decisions. We just did as the doctor said. Today, we actually work along with the physicians, and nurses now have more education, more credentials. We're able to go and get certifications and advanced degrees, and so there's a lot more as your slide says, a lot more structure to what we do today. One example of collective action is when something may be patient care, such as organizing a group of providers to ensure that there is seamless transition going from one to the another. Another example is something that focuses on workplace, such as having a group sign a petition to support a manager. A final example of collective action could be committing to work together to cover maybe a colleague's illness, where everyone comes in and they donate some of their time and they come in and help cover the shifts. Collection action can also mean organizing for the purposes of collective bargaining. Although the purpose is a little bit different, the desire and the skill to work together is very similar in these situations. So when you have collective bargaining, it's usually a formal process where employees select a bargaining agent to represent all of their interests. It begins usually with an election of a union or a group who's going to represent the employees in a class, such as a registered nurse, or maybe many groups up to including some of your non-management employees within an organization. And in the middle of it all, we have magnet designation, which has helped us to become more fruitful in our careers and where we're going. Although people will work collectively for many reasons, we're actually going to focus on the common ones found in employment settings where nurses work. And there is a demand for participation, decision-making, rather than providing participation. This helps to empower our nurses. So please look over these definitions. When shared governance was first implemented, it's not uncommon to find that one or more committees are charged with certain specific tasks. As the organization starts to gain experience, these committee structures spread throughout the entire organization. Getting to better decisions often is one of the outcomes that we want to reach, because more diversity is included up front. So there's more ideas are being tested before a decision is actually made. Because people like me are involved in the decision, and like me is in quotes, it's likely that more of us will implement the new policy or the new practice, so we're all alike. After all, someone who works with a given issue on a daily basis may be able to say why other strategies would not work and why one or more strategies would be more effective. Again, because support of speaking up and offering ideas is evolving, more people risk participating or offering ideas. Those ideas may be about issues presented from management, but they eventually evolve into more of a self-generated idea. We also have workplace culture, and when the idea of a shared governance is usually instituted within an organization, it usually requires that everyone change the way decisions are made. Although direct care nurses may have to assume new roles in providing input for some of the decisions, those nurses who were making the decisions previously also have to change. So they must now deliberately seek input from staff. So both managers and follower roles have actually changed. When we're in the workplace or wherever we may be, you usually have someone who is either your role model or your mentor. So I'm going to let you just look at these definitions. And this is still just another reminder of those traits that we want to see in team members. Because again, to form a team, of which we're going to talk a little bit more about later on, we need to be able to understand who is involved and what these members' roles are, and who do you want on your team. You want to be selective when you're trying to especially reach a goal. And here are our traits for the leader or the management. I have a few slides here that I want to go over with you, talking about management and looking at quality and risk management in the workplace. Here's a list of some of our adverse events, and this is any event that is preventable or maybe was not foreseen that can cause harm to our patients as a result of our care. So we have our Sentinel events, our never events, which you've heard many times, the hospital-acquired conditions, which we've pounded in your heads, death or permanent harm or temporary harm. So any of these events, as it says here, caused a patient to receive care they wouldn't have normally needed, should not be happening. So you do actually have offices who actually look at this, and they review any of the paperwork sent in if something does happen, some type of adverse event, and then they go through looking through your Sentinel events and how we can prevent something from happening. Here's an example of some of your Sentinel and never events. I do have a handout that I'm going to show you in class and pass it around, but is the National Patient Safety Goals that were sent out January 2017. So I haven't gotten the latest update for 2018 and beyond, but I do have the ones for this past year. And to make sure that we are within the rules, regulations, policies, and so forth, we do have the standards of quality care, and here are some of the organizations that you may become very familiar with in your workplace. If you've ever been acquainted with one of these departments or someone who works in this department, what they do is they do audits and chart audits, and they will start to look and see where there may be a need because some events are happening, and so they will actually assemble a team, and this team will start to collect data to see how often this has happened, where is it starting, how can we prevent it. So they start to establish some outcomes that they want to reach, and what are some of the quality indicators that they're going to monitor along the way. Once they've gotten all their information, they're going to select and implement a plan, and as always, we evaluate. So at the end they will evaluate. One of the processes that were put into place from this was the room checks that for the CNA or the nurses to do, and they have the form and they sign it out that they did do the room check, because sometimes a patient may code, short of breath, something may happen, and they would go in and the room was not equipped with the right equipment or supplies that were needed in that situation where otherwise it should have been there. The last chapter I'm going to review is self-management, stress, and time. One way to prevent stress is actually learning how to manage your time, because sometimes we do think, oh my gosh, I just, the day went by and I still haven't done this, this, and this. So here's some things that can cause you to lose time and impede your time management in the workplace. So go ahead and look through this list and see if any of this relates to you or you have experienced. Here's some ways that we can manage our time, and of course always setting priorities, prioritize and be organized. And delegation, and again, delegation, many times new nurses don't want to delegate But it is a way to help you manage your time. It's not that you're being bossy or that you feel like you have more experience and you can, or you have a higher degree than someone, so you're going to tell them what they need to do. That's not what it's about. It allows you to manage your time and also to be able to provide patient care in a reasonable amount of time. Job stress is another thing that affects nurses. And don't think that every time you have a headache is due to stress or feeling tired. Usually, when we're working hard, yeah, we are tired, and sometimes we can have a headache. It could be that you know, didn't eat right or drink enough fluids that day. I mean, it could be many different things. But there are subtle signs of stress, and also when you or a co-worker repeatedly says, "I don't care," or "you decide," unless the decision is actually, inconsequential, this may be a sign of stress. When you get to that point, "I don't care," or "I could care less," "you decide," I really don't care. And when you have that feedback, that's not good. That's showing that, yeah, you are under some stress. Here's some signs of stress that can happen. We can go over these in class, but I do want you to review over them and see if you can't relate something that you've experienced watching another nurse on the floor, or it may be in your time on the units as well. One of the problems that we're seeing now is burnout, and some of the characteristics that we usually see with burnout is physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, and emotional exhaustion. People can become very cynical. They may have somatization, where they actually have physical effects from the stress and burnout, or they start to depersonalize themselves from their patients and their workplace. When it comes to stress, prevention is key, and it starts with choosing the right place to work. If you had a bad experience during a clinical situation, you don't need to decide to work there to overcome this experience. Move on. Figure out what the daily stressors are, and then try to space them out, avoid them, or find new ways to respond to them. Don't forget the physical stress that is just as damaging as psychological stress. Insist on equipment in the workplace that helps you to do your work in a correct and timely manner and prevents injuries as well.